to episode number 5 of The Grace Between Us.
I am Laurie.
And as always, I am Nathan Hurst. And today we're going to tackle a topic that is very difficult at times to deal with different folks.
How do you know who's the one for you?
That's right. How do you know this person, he or she, is the person that I'm destined to be with? How do I know they're my Prince Charming? How do I know this is the one I am meant for, made for, crafted by God for?
I know. I've thought about that for a long time,
Even after we were married.
Oh, gosh, no. But,
Sometimes.
you want to know. You want to know that you're making the right decision. You want to know that this is a forever decision and that you're not just going into another short-term relationship. You want to know.
You want to know, again, that you made the quality decision. You want to know you're making the right decision. You want to know that this person is going to stand with you through thick and thin.
Right.
And how do you know that when you've known someone 6 months,
It's hard.
a year, 18 months,
Yeah.
sometimes even 3 years? Life happens. People change.
Sometimes that does happen for certain individuals, but that is such a rare occurrence that after like one date, you
never
hear
happens.
stories
It never
like that and people are together 50 years later, but that is so rare. Like, please don't assume that's what's going to happen for you.
No, and likelihood is they found out they were the one many, many, many years later.
Yeah.
It was likely not they were the one after the first date or after the first 6 months or after sometimes the first kid.
I always have 3 basic things that I talk to people about when we talk about the subject. And the first one is when you're about to date someone or thinking about dating someone, make sure that you're friends first. If you don't like that person, if you don't like hanging out with them, you don't like their friends, most likely you don't like them. And so don't try to force it.
Yeah, that's a good thing to remind ourselves of. If you don't like hanging out, I guess the old adage was the family that prays together stays together. Unfortunately, there's a lot of families that pray together that fall apart.
Right.
The reality is the family that plays together stays together.
Yeah.
If you can learn how to have a relationship with your spouse where you actually enjoy each other's company, like you're saying, be friends first. It's kind of our situation. We got married after all of our friends group fell away and we were the only 2 left. It's kind of like, well, maybe we should get married because we like each other, we like hanging out, and nobody else is around. Well, maybe that's not the only reason. But it did help to know that we were friends for a long time first.
You have to have that connection, that personal connection. You can talk to that person and like them and enjoy spending time with them, not just like the way they look, There's a lot more to it than that. So we have to connect on that level and have a serious, real relationship where you can talk to them and they can be your best friend.
That's right. The Bible's real clear that looks fade.
Yeah.
That over time, we all get old. The crow's feet set in. The wrinkles set in, right? Ladies, the V starts happening. I'm not going to get into the V, but the V starts happening and life you're not the same person you used to be. And when that happens, it's got to be more than just looks. It's got to be more than just the initial attraction.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that's long lasting and long term. And again, for our number one, it's a big deal. It's get to know each other, be friends, see them angry before you commit. How do they treat their mama?
Yeah.
What's their credit score? Girls,
Right.
guys, what's her credit score? If it sucks, how much debt does she have? You get married and you're in college and you both are facing $80,000 bills of school each. That's 160 between the two of you. That's a ton of money. Are they the one? Shouldn't be a financial reason to choose, but you got to know what you're getting into.
Right.
That's a reason to be friends first.
Having friends, being honest, getting to know each other. The second thing that I tell people is, you have to pray about it.
Yep.
Take time, ask God, what am I supposed to do? And, you'll be led to know what to do and if that person is the right person for you.
Yeah, and even if you're in a married context already, you might be saying, man, I've already jumped that ship. Well, are you praying that if they're not the one right now, that they won't be the one later on? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of marriages that get into a relationship together and they didn't start off on the best foot.
No.
You might have gotten married and come to Jesus later. Maybe you were in the family of Christ before and you came together and you just didn't come by way of means that you're proud of. That's okay.
Sure.
That happens to a lot of people.
It does.
But it doesn't mean they can't be the one.
Right. Right.
It means that you might have to put in some prayer and energy and effort to see that person in a different light.
Yes.
To see them as the one and to know that this is really what God has for you. Because again, I think in our culture, we look for the easy answer. So I want to marry the next one, the next guy, the one that treats my kids right, or the one that, has his bills paid and he's got a nice car, or the girl that looks good and man, she's good eye candy, or whatever it might be. But that doesn't necessarily make them the one.
Right.
You've got to go through the process of life together to know.
They need to love Jesus, And when
that should be number one, I guess. I guess we should have started a list over. Number one, they love Jesus.
And
if that's
we talk
not
about
it,
that and praying about it. When we pray about it, the things that we know we should be looking for in a person that God would have for us come out. We're not gonna be praying, oh God, is it the one? And we know like they're the furthest from God. They don't go to church.
Yeah.
They don't respect you like the Bible tells.
Or they don't even respect your religious context, right? There's one thing, if maybe they're not on the same wavelength as you are yet spiritually, you can't necessarily judge the relationship by that, but you want to know that they're at least open and heading in that direction.
Right.
And again, there have been some phenomenal relationships come out of very broken situations where one person wasn't even saved, or sometimes both of them weren't saved. So there's a little more to it, but if you have that in your life where you're praying to God, asking for direction, then you've got to look at the whole picture.
Right.
And it might not necessarily be something, we'll talk about some finer points here in a minute, but it might not necessarily be something that is obvious that you're praying for. It might be one of these finer points that we'll get to in just a second. But what's your third one?
The last one would just be take time. So many times people want to rush into situations, relationships. Well, this is the one, I just know it. Well, time speaks volumes. And when we take time to get to know somebody, even after you've been friends, there's still a lot you don't know about them. We're still learning about each other almost 14 years of marriage later.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
It feels like it was just yesterday.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Depends on the day. Today was a long day. I'm still picking ribs out of my teeth from earlier. We had a great meal with some friends from some folks from our church over, and it was just a great opportunity to get to know some new people around the church. But, even today, even in this context, we're telling stories and sharing stories, and there's things that come up or nuanced ideas about the other person, even though we've been married, like she said, for 14 years. Almost, right? Yeah. It's coming up.
But, taking time, I think, was key in our relationship, especially in our dating, even, being engaged. We were engaged almost a year and a half before we got married.
Yep.
I don't know what? I knew that I knew without a doubt because we had taken time.
I knew that I knew without a doubt till about 48 hours before.
You didn't tell
me
that.
Wait a minute. Well, you learn something new every day, but especially about your spouse.
You have to think too, sometimes we want to rush into these relationships thinking that marriage is going to all of a sudden change everything. That I do is going to be that moment where everything becomes perfect in the dream that you had in your mind. No, it doesn't happen. I'm sorry to shatter some of your childhood dreams, but it doesn't happen that way. And you have to realize you have a lifetime together. And so take your time to make sure that you know that that's the person. And the worst thing you could do is rush it and assume when you haven't taken the time and your relationship hasn't withstood the test of time.
That's right. And the fact is that I do moment is not an end.
No.
It is the basic beginning. How do I know they're the one? You're not rushing to an I do. You're rushing to an I do followed by 50 years of marriage.
Yeah.
That's what you're really rushing to.
Unfortunately, it seems like in a lot of marriage relationships, once they say I do, they stop trying.
They stop trying.
So,
Totally.
I'm not trying to say don't get married. That's not it. But what I am saying is that things don't just miraculously change into what you dreamed of because you said I do.
No, just because you say I do doesn't mean that it's all sunshine and tulips. Like you've still got to work hard.
That's why taking time, getting to know that person, knowing what they act like when they're upset, knowing how they celebrate, all of those things are so important so that you aren't surprised. You know this person and this is who you want to spend the rest of your life with.
That's right. One of the biggest issues with marriage, it's the same thing as planting a church. It is. There's an issue that's very high. It's unrealistic expectations. Yeah. Everyone that plants a church thinks they're going to blow up and be the next Billy Graham, Stephen Furtick, whatever, overnight. And they're going to have 10,000 people within the next, 2 years. And that does happen for some people, but not for most people. And the reality is that when we get married, we think we're going to have maybe the cleaver, mentality, right? The Joan Cleaver, and I don't remember the guy's name, dating me a little bit, but these perfect ideas of marriage. And the fact is, most of us are a Marge and Homer Simpson rather than the perfect
Be
picture of
compared
it.
to
I
him.
know, right? Well, it's my middle name is Homer, so it fits. But
Yeah.
the fact is, most of us fit into a different category, a broken category, a category that isn't perfect.
Right.
And so we need to learn to be honest with ourselves about where we're going with this relationship, and it does take a lot of time to get there. But the big point that I think maybe the big first point we want to bring out is the idea of empathy. If this person that you're trying to make the one, you're believing is the one, maybe you're married and you're trying to find out, ooh, man, how God can I look at this person in a new light as being the one? The first thing is empathy. Learning how to empathize with the other person's position.
Yeah.
Whether it's pre-marriage or post-marriage, if they're going to be the one, your one and only for a lifetime, you have to learn how to empathize.
Right.
You have to learn how to shoulder their baggage. You have to learn how to be one with them in their trial and their struggle. You have to learn how to feel what they're feeling.
It's hard too,
Well,
but
yeah.
but that's how you have a relationship. That's how you have a solid relationship.
Absolutely.
Is when you'll be there in the hard times. You're going to help shoulder, what they're going through.
That's right. That's right. And your husbands, I actually have to say this is a bigger issue for men than it is for women, the idea of empathy. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 25 says, the husbands, you're to love your wives just as Christ loved the church and he gave himself for her. That literally means that Jesus killed his own fleshly, selfish desires and gave himself for her. We know that Jesus at one point was like, God, if it's not your will, or if it would be your will, let this cup pass from me. Like, I don't want to go through this difficult thing called the cross. Yet he put that aside, Ephesians chapter 5:25, he put that will aside and he gave himself for the church. In the same way, husbands are supposed to do that for their wives.
Right.
Have this much empathy that, hey, I want to go to the sporting game. No, my wife wants me to go hang around the mall and hold her purse for her.
Yeah. Spending time together, and maybe it doesn't mean that it's exactly what you would like to do, but
That's
because
right.
you love that person, you're willing to set aside the desires that you have and
That's
you want to
right.
do, and you go with your spouse to be with them, to support them, to love them.
Yeah. I was talking with a gentleman one time and his marriage was on the rocks and he was talking about the issue between he and his wife. And he said, you know what? I don't want to go on another beach vacation. I've been on enough. Why can't she do what I want to do? And this verse jumped off the pages at me. Seriously, dude, your whole job as a husband, it's not saying you don't get your way from time to time,
Right.
but your whole job as a husband is to prefer her, is to put her first. That's empathizing.
Right.
And you know what? If you do it enough, she's going to empathize back with you.
Exactly. There's moments that you don't want to be supportive. There's moments that you don't want to like what you're doing or where you're at or even like them at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
when
trust me, married people and pre-married people, sometimes you're not going to like your spouse. It's just like parents. There are times you're not going to like your kids. I'm sorry. It's true. It's honest. There are times where I'm looking at my little brats going, who are you demon children? Get away from me.
But when you set aside those fleshly desires, in a lack of better terms, and recognize the care and love and concern that you have for that person that you are living life with,
Yes.
it's going to come back to you, and
That's
it's
right.
going to be rewarding. It's going to be way
That's
more
right.
rewarding than you having that moment doing exactly what you wanted to do. I promise.
I promise. And if you're pre-married, you're not married yet, single, whatever, maybe you're widowed, maybe it's the second time. If the person that you see as the one cannot empathize with you at all, you need to question that relationship. If you're in a relationship now and they have a hard time empathizing with you, then you need to pray to God to help empathy rule and roll in your heart. And man, I'm empathizing right now with my dog who's in her cage whining like she's being murdered or put to sleep. I don't know what's going on with her. There's just a little puppy and you got to deal with it when she does. She's a 60-pound, 8-month-old Doberman. So she's all right.
I heard it explained though once, about when you get married, you're signing up to serve
That's
the
right.
other person. And
That's right.
so if you're not willing to serve the person that you're dating or that you're married to,
That's right.
that's a red flag. We have
huge red
to
flag.
really take a step back and say, hey, I love this person so much that I want to serve them. And
That's right.
it's a hard one to swallow because we hear that word and we're like, I don't need to serve
Service.
anyone. What?
What?
No,
Come on.
this
I'm
is
the
what-
head of the house, woman. Serve me.
That doesn't work
Make
so
me a
well,
sandwich.
I promise.
No, it doesn't. It
No,
doesn't.
gosh.
It doesn't work. You know, the funny thing about that mentality, my grandparents, of German heritage, and my grandfather complained about my grandma's cooking one time, particularly her breakfast cooking. And she never made breakfast for the man again in their
Never.
marriage. Never. So guys, watch yourself.
I threaten. I need to follow through with those things.
Yeah, I don't complain about much about your food because it's getting so much better.
It was
than
bad at the beginning.
It was rough. Dear Jesus, those hockey pucks that were hamburgers.
I
My
tried.
goodness.
I was
I know,
trying.
it's so much better
And
now.
you ate it.
I did eat it. But it brings me to my next point is you got to enjoy them rather than fix him or her.
That's a hard one.
That's a hard
Because
one.
a lot of people get into relationships because they want to fix them. They're like,
They do.
I want to fix you. You're a project.
They do. Well,
We
a
watch
lot of
movies
folks,
about it.
We do, and it always comes out the Cinderella
Always, it's
story, right?
perfect.
And most folks, if they get caught up in that codependent nature, I need you to need me concept,
Yeah.
they never really enjoy their spouse.
Right.
And if you're right now in a relationship, pre-married, and you are trying to fix that other person, you need to slow the train back
Yeah.
because there's a likelihood they're not the one.
Right.
If they need you to fix them, and if you are their fix, if you are the fix for them and not Jesus,
You're not.
slow your roll, girl. Slow your roll, boy. Because my
You're not that
guess,
good.
Yeah, exactly. You're not the savior of that person. The second thing is when we are trying to fix someone all the time, the relationship inevitably lacks intimacy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because at some point that other person thinks I'm just a project.
Right.
Or you feel like you're just attending to someone else's needs
Yeah.
and brokenness. And it doesn't allow the relationship to flourish.
No, your confidence is just cut in half
It's
or
cut
less,
off.
you
Yeah.
know, and you feel like you don't bring anything to the table and that you're worthless because obviously you can't function without that person, right?
That's what the codependent nature feels
Right.
like, isn't it? And you know, the hard part is that lack of intimacy, you know, it translates to multiple facets. It's the emotional connection
Yeah.
that you don't feel with that person. It's the lack of physical connection that ends up coming from that because there's always something to fix, or you
Right.
always feel like you're the one being fixed.
Right. And then when that happens, you become resentful.
At both sides.
You want to, you're mad. You know, you're mad because
Yep.
they're not doing what you want them to do, or you're mad because you're constantly the project and have to be fixed
Absolutely.
and nothing you can do is okay.
And nothing you can do is okay.
Right.
And you know, the two of us have been on both sides of this coin. You know, we've both been on different aspects where we felt like we were the project, and we've both been on the side where we felt like we were the one doing the fixing. And it switches from time to time depending on what station of life we're in, depending on what season of life we're in. And we've both felt that. We've both
Right.
fallen prey to this trap. We were smart enough, I think, early on to recognize if this becomes an overriding pattern, this isn't a good relationship.
We came to a head at a couple times and
Yep.
we're just like, whoa, this can't continue.
No, it can't continue. But if this person that you're with is the one, whether you're married, post-married, you've got to learn how to just enjoy them for who they are.
Right.
You know, a friend of ours gave me, and Laurie, you were in the car when we were kind of going over this, but gave this statement that God was smart enough, intelligent
I love
enough
this. Yeah.
to give you your spouse with all their faults.
Right.
Because you need their faults.
Just as much as the great things about them. Yeah.
That's right. Just as much as all the things you love about them, all the things that are perfect about them, all the negative things, the broken things about them, you need those too.
I heard that and I literally had tears streaming down my
She did.
face because it's so true. So many times those things that frustrate you and the things that you just make you so mad, it wasn't a surprise to God. He knew exactly what he was doing.
He knew exactly
And those
what he
things
was
are
doing.
things to grow both of you.
Absolutely.
And they can be a benefit if you don't let it rule and take over in a negative way. You know, you have
That's
to
right.
work through them.
You've got to learn how to work through some of those things, and they're not always easy
No.
to work through. And you know, that brings me to our last point that we really want to hit home on, and it's the idea of don't keep score. Dude, if they're really the one, you won't be keeping
That
score.
one's hard. We've struggled with that one a
Ooh,
bit.
Good Lord Jesus. We're both pretty confrontational people and like to argue a little bit. And maybe me more than her. But she keeps scoring her own way. Trust me, I've been told how little I've done the dishes or what little things I haven't
I've done this 10 times. It's your turn.
That's right. It's your turn to do another dirty diaper. If you can gut a deer, man, you can clean a diaper. Just saying. But you know, 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 5 says, love keeps no record of
Right.
wrongs.
That's hard.
It might be hard, but if it's true, if that verse is true and honest, if honest to goodness love is not keeping a record of wrong, if right now you're pre-married and every time you have an argument, you just list all the wrong things about that person,
Stop.
all the scorekeeping, first of all, yeah, you got to learn to stop. Second of all, question that relationship. Are they the one? If they're doing that to you, are they the one?
Right.
If you're building a marriage relationship where you want to say, I married the one, maybe it wasn't day one that they were the one, but day 101 they became the one, you've got to learn to quit keeping score about everything. It's
Yeah.
not worth it.
Well, and if you don't, you have to figure out how to deal with that in your life. You know, it can follow you through all kinds of things, and it can even follow you to different relationships. And so
Absolutely.
connecting that now and understanding that, you know, no matter if it's in a marriage relationship or a friendship or in your family, don't keep record of that. It's not going to end well.
That's right. And if it's just a tit for tat moment where you are trying literally to even the scoring field, if you're trying to even the scoreboard all the time, you are going to live a horrible marriage. Trust me.
You're an issue.
Well, you are the issue. By the way, if you're the one keeping score, you are the issue. If your spouse is keeping score, you're both the issue. If you're keeping score and they're not keeping score, the likelihood is it's just because they're beat down.
Yeah.
Let me be honest, men and women. It's likely because you have just beaten them into submission and they don't feel they can win.
Wow.
It's truth, though, right?
Yeah.
No one is perfect.
You know, we've
No one
always
is
heard
perfect.
too, you know, marriage is work. And I hated hearing that statement before we got married. You know, oh, you don't know. I believe that ours is gonna be amazing, blah, 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 which is fantastic.
We got a little guy in a diaper walking by us.
It's fantastic to believe the best, but we have to understand that, you know, believing the best and having faith does not mean there's not going to be work. Does not mean there's not going to be times where you have to work through things and that it's going to be hard. So please don't lose faith when you see that it's hard. Don't lose faith when you aren't perfect or they're
That's
not
right.
perfect, because
That's
you know
right.
God is using all of these things to grow you closer and closer as a couple and have even better relationship.
That's right. God will use everything about us, every broken issue, every mess up, every screw up, every time that we could tell our spouse how wrong they are, every time we could goof up. We're laughing because there's so much going on in the background right now. It's unbelievable. There goes the little masked man behind us, our little one. But the fact is, man, if we're going to know that person is the one, we've got to come to a place where we quit keeping score.
Right.
And we're just happy to be with the one
Right.
that God has brought into our life. Kids are going nuts right now. The dog's even barking. So we're going to end this episode. I know that wasn't enough. We'll have to touch on this topic again.
Yes.
And we'll cover it even more in depth. But we hope you're enjoying these. We hope you're enjoying everything about the grace between us, the conversation between Laurie and I. If you want to follow us on Instagram or Twitter or the Facebook, it's at the
You
grace
said the
between us.
Facebook.
I did on purpose.
That means we're old.
That means we're old. It's at the grace between us, and you can find us on any one of those
Yes.
platforms. Please like, share, comment all of the content, and also subscribe so that you don't miss a beat on
Yeah.
what goes on here. Man, we can't wait to hang out with you again. Thank you for joining me.